Hi, welcome back to the kitchen. Today we are going to be making some honey whole wheat bread. This recipe is by Plain and Not So Plain, her YouTube channel, and she has a website with all her recipes. Feel free to check her stuff out. She does some really good big family things. This recipe that I'm going to be making does 5 loaves, so let's get into it. I thought a good verse for today would be John chapter 6 verse 35. Jesus replied to them, I am the bread of life. The one who comes to me will never be hungry, and the one who believes in me as Savior will never be thirsty, for that one will be sustained spiritually, from the Amplified Version. For the 5 loaves, I'm going to be using 6 3/4 teaspoons of yeast. To convert that, that's 2 tablespoons and 3/4 teaspoon of yeast. 5 cups of warm water. You want it to be about 110 degrees, so it's going to be warmer than your skin, but it's not going to be piping hot or you'll kill your yeast and it won't rise properly. I'm going to use 2/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon of honey, 2/3 cup of coconut oil, 1/2 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 4 cups of flour to start with, and then 6 to 8 more cups of flour to get it to the proper consistency. And then this recipe also calls for 1 cup of wheat germ, which I don't currently have on hand accessible, so I'm going to omit that. I'm going to just add flour, a little bit extra flour if I need it, to make it the proper consistency. All right, so let's get into it. In my large mixing bowl here, I'm going to get the 5 cups of warm water. To this, I'm going to add a little bit of my honey, that 1 tablespoon approximately, and my yeast. Going to give that a little bit of a stir to incorporate the honey in and get the yeast into the water. And what this is going to do is activate our yeast and let it start blooming. And you'll see it, now I'm gonna let it sit, but you'll see it start rising up and growing from the water. It's feeding on that honey that we put in there, and that's activating it and helping it to grow. So we're gonna let it sit for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back in and start adding more ingredients. The next thing that we're going to do is add the rest of the honey. We're going to add the oil, the sugar, and the salt. So let's get started. We're still in that cold front, so my honey is pretty cold. That warm water should loosen it up. Coconut oil and salt. And since I'm using pink Himalayan sea salt, I'm gonna add a little bit more just because it doesn't quite always have the same salt level. Give that a bit of a mix. For this part, I'm using my whole wheat bread flour. The next part, the 6 to 8 cups, is going to be a mix of bread flour and pastry flour, just to make it a little bit lighter. This is just going to be kind of soupy like this. This is just to kind of start getting the flour incorporated into your mix so that it can start accepting it, and then we'll add more and more a little bit at a time. You don't have to worry about getting every single clump out. That will start mixing as we add more and more flour. In case you're wondering, this is a 2-cup measure. I got it from Azure Standard. Looks really great for instances like this where you're making big batches. I'm just going to incorporate this 2 cups at a time. At this stage, it's got still some of the lumps from that initial, but it's getting a lot smoother. They're getting a lot smaller. It's breaking apart as we're stirring and adding more flour. If you don't have one of these, I think they're called Danish dough hooks. I highly recommend you get one. If I had a regular whisk, I would have been kneading by hand at this point. This thing does an amazing job. At this point, we've done the 6 cups extra, plus the 4 initial cups. We're at 10 cups, but it's still very loose. It's very sticky. It's not adhering at all. It's just a goopy mess. It's almost like a thick pancake batter almost. So we need to add more flour for this part. I'm not gonna add all of the 8 cups. I'm gonna measure it out so I know, but I'm gonna take it a little bit at a time so that as it comes together, I haven't added too much, because I can always add more, but I can't take it out. I can tell from this I am gonna need quite a bit more flour, but again, I'm gonna take it slow because you never know. And if at any point, as it starts getting thicker like this, you wanna drop the dough hook and start using your hands, which I'll probably do here in a minute, feel free. It's good to get your hands in there and start feeling the dough so that you know what consistency it is. It's really a tactile thing. I think I'm gonna call that good for the dough hook. Start using my hands now. And at this point, measuring doesn't matter. You just want to add a little bit more at a time until it's right. You want it to hold together better than what it's doing and not be quite so sticky. It's going to be spongy, but it's not going to be quite so sticky. I'm going to let this set for about 10 minutes just to make sure that it's absorbed the water properly, and I'll come back and check on it. As long as it has, then we will coat it with oil. If not, we'll add a little bit more flour. Let's take a look. I've been resting it for that 10 minutes. I think it's nicely hydrated. It's not sticky. It's moist. It's spongy feeling. I think it's going to be just fine. I am going to add a little bit of oil since we're letting it sit for about an hour so it doesn't dry out. Just kind of hand pat that. I don't want to roll it into a ball at this state with the wheat flour. I'm comfortable with it being like this. I'm just going to recover it and let it sit for 1 hour from here. When you're letting your dough rise, you need to make sure it's in a warm area. So I'm going to put mine into my oven with the light on just because it's still pretty chilly and I don't want it to take an hour and a half to 2 hours to rise. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and grease my pans. All right, I've got my pans all lined up here and I've got some olive oil from Azure Standard. I'm going to pour a little bit into each one and then use my basting brush to kind of spread it around easier. I get the bottom and the sides at least halfway up just to help it with releasing easier. These silicone pans are new to me, so hopefully they'll work really, really well. I'm excited to try them. All done. Now we wait for the rising. All right, let's check out our dough and see how it's done. We did leave it an extra 30 minutes. It needed a little more time to rise. That's looking really good. What I'm going to do is punch it down, roll it into smaller discs, and let it rise another hour, hour and a half. And then I'm gonna form my loaves, let it rise an hour as well, and then we're off to baking. So let's get started. I'm gonna get some flour down on my surface and then turn it out. Oh yeah, this is feeling really nice. I'm not gonna go too liberal on the flour on the counter because I don't wanna overly dry it. Okay, from this point, I'm gonna make it smaller and I need 5 loaves. You can measure out the weight if you want to get really precise, but I'm just gonna estimate it. These dough scrapers are great. They cut through the dough really well, and then you can clean up afterwards any bits that are left on the counter. Okay, let me set these others aside, make some room. Just kind of lightly flour my surface and get to kneading. And what you're doing with kneading is you're stretching out the glutens in the dough so that it will rise and do all the things that bread needs to do. And then when you let it rise, you're letting those glutens relax. Way back in the day, I used to work at a pizza place and kneaded flour to make the dough, the crust. So got lots of experience with that. Back when Little Caesars was actually really, really, really good. I'm just gonna kind of tuck in the bottom here, give it a little twist, shape it into a disc, and lay it on there. If you need a little bit more flour, feel free to grab and shake it on, make a little pile on the side to grab from later. Your dough's gonna be nice and pliable. It's not gonna be super sticky. It can be a little bit sticky, but it doesn't need to be super sticky. Has a little bounce back whenever you push down on it, and you're just stretching it out. It's starting to get a little sticky as I'm pulling it from the middle, so I push a little more flour on there, work that in a little bit. But again, you don't want to do too much. You don't want to dry it out. It's a balancing act. I'm gonna grab my towel, and I'm gonna cover that back up, and then set it back in the oven with the light on for an hour to an hour and a half. I'll check on it at an hour and decide then if it needs to be punched down and made into loaves or go for 30 more minutes. So we'll see you back then. While I'm waiting for those to rise, I'm gonna do a little cleanup. I'm gonna use my scraper here to gather up all these bits. And this is why I would never use that little Ryobi vacuum. It would not be worth the effort to clean all of this up. You just simply put it in the trash like that. No filter to clean up, no little bits. Well, we have let our loaves rise for about an hour and 20 minutes. Let's take the cloth off and see how they're doing. Oh yeah, those look beautiful. What we're gonna do now is go ahead and form the loaves and put them into each of the pans. I'm gonna recover them up and let them rise for an hour before baking. To do that, we're just gonna pick up one of the patties here, form it into whatever shape you want. You could do round, you could do oblong like this. This one's smaller, so I'm gonna put it in here. And then for these larger ones, I'm gonna put them in the wider pans. And what we're doing doing with this is kind of mashing out some of those air bubbles while we shape it. Now I'm gonna bunch these loaves pretty close together, cover them up, and set my timer. Then we'll be back to preheat the oven to 350 and bake them for 30 to 40 minutes. Now it is time, after about an hour of letting the loaves rise, to get them ready to go in the oven. I've got the oven already preheated to 350, so let's remove the towel and get into it. Very nice. So what I'm gonna do kind of minimal on this. I've got a bread scoring knife here that I'm going to use to just cut some lines in. You can do it however you want. I generally just like to kind of do 3. That kind of lets the steam come out and let it break apart in a hopefully more controlled area than just bursting apart wherever. Now what I'm going to do is do a little milk wash on them, and then I'm going to top them. You don't have to do this, I just like the look. I'm going to top them with some oats. The milk should let the oats stick to the bread. Looks really good right there. Okay, we're gonna pop these in the oven all together on the top shelf, and we will bake them for the 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll pull them out and see what they look like. Alrighty, our timer has gone off and it smells amazing in here, just saying. So let's pull these out because I smell test, they're done. Oh wow. Beautiful. Now what we need to do is just let these sit for 10 minutes to kind of set a little bit. Then we're going to turn them out onto cooling racks. Probably dig into at least one of them. I've been informed maybe 2. And I've got some homemade honey butter sauce we're probably gonna try on top of it. And then the rest of them I'm gonna let cool completely, stick them in Ziploc bags, label them, and stick them in the freezer for a night when I want some fresh bread, but I didn't have the time to devote to this. And I've found that these thaw beautifully. They come out great. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Alrighty, let's go for it. It's time. Oh yeah, that comes out super easy on those. Very nice. So if it sticks, just gently rub a knife down the side. Try again. There we go. Just had a little crust stuck on the side. No big deal. And if you notice, on this one, we did have a little bit of a splitting on the side, but it did help kind of control, and that may be because it got mashed together a little bit here, but that's perfectly fine. Still edible. We will blow through that, no problem. Alrighty, let's slice into this one. Wow, it's so soft. And you can see it's moist. It's very warm still, so be careful, but flaky a little bit on the outside. It's beautiful. And I will let my lovely cameraman try this since he wanted some. Good. I'm gonna go ahead and slice the rest of this so that the family can have some. And ideally you want to let it cool more, but you know how it is with fresh bread, you just can't wait. It smells so good. And I'm being very careful. I've got my bread knife that I've had for years from Tupperware. You don't want to squish down on it, you want to let it saw in a little bit and then just slice through back and forth. Otherwise you'll wind up with squished bread. You don't want that. Well, we're down to the last bit. We need to put away what we so painstakingly made today and keep it fresh so that we can use it in the future. The loaves are now cool enough to where I can put them into Ziploc bags and freeze them. And as you can see, we only have a little bit left fresh. I'm gonna use a small bag for that. It'll probably be gone by morning. I would not be surprised. These are great to have in the freezer for your own use, but also if you prepare meals for people for a gift, like when somebody is sick or they've had a baby, this is great to have on hand so you don't have to make it fresh or do store-bought. You just grab it out of the freezer and defrost it for them so they can eat it that day and just deliver them homemade bread with ease. So I'm gonna zip these up and remove as much of the air as possible and then label them. I like to do 1 loaf per bag so that extra bread doesn't go bad, but if I had a crowd, I could pull out 2. If you're single or just a couple that you don't need quite so much bread, since it has no preservatives, it will go bad quickly compared to store-bought. And if you don't want to pull out so much, you could always cut it before you could cut it in half, cut it in thirds, cut it in slices and portion size it, whatever you want to do, and then freeze that with parchment paper. It just depends on how little you're getting, but you can freeze it in smaller portions. You could vacuum seal it to preserve freshness even longer, and that way you don't have to pull out a whole loaf if it's just a few of you. So you've got many options with this, and you can make it very, very convenient for yourself, and then you can make your own bread and it'll last you that much longer. So I hope you give this recipe a try. We really, really love it. It is so delicious, and we thank you for joining us in our kitchen today. Have a blessed day.